Okay, cool. All right, guys. What is up, everybody? My name is Richard Terrell. I go by Kirby Kid, and you are watching an exit interview. I hold these interviews with everyone who actually accomplish reaching mastery in my game, enLIGHTen. enLIGHTen is a puzzle game that teaches you how you learn. So in these exit interviews, I will talk about each individual person's experience, their process, their thought process, and we'll take a look at their stats and see what we can understand about how they learned and see if it all makes sense. So I got Jeff here on the line, and I'm playing on his file, and we're going to take a quick look at the records page, and I'm going to mute this because that's obnoxious.
Yeah, let me actually pull up the records page myself too.
Cool. So did the compass make sense to you?
So it looked like it was. So it looked. The chart was showing me how much time was spent in each category.
Mm-hmm.
So the chart was more filled up towards the mode that I'd spend the most time in.
Mm-hmm.
At least recently, from what you had told me.
Yeah.
When I was kind of getting that to work.
Yeah, and then
I'm opening up the record links.
Yeah.
Yeah, so as far as it working as a compass, the fact that it's pointing, it looks like it's pointing in the direction where I've spent the most time already, so that is kind of, I think that's a little counterintuitive. I did notice on the mastery page there's like another little blue shape, at least at the moment, that's pointing
to explore mode.
Yeah, that is pointing towards explore mode, so that is towards the less stressed area at that time.
Yeah.
I
I
think I reached enlightenment before I had the compass, so I never had a chance to see how that looked exactly, but I'm seeing just like a little orange pentagon.
Yeah, and it's not pointing anywhere because you recently didn't gain any points towards enlightenment. Yeah, you can unlock this compass really early, so you did it relatively at the end of your journey, so it wouldn't help you here. But yeah, in mastery, you can see that the last bit of mastery you gained in the last 5 sessions or 5 hours or whatever, you got in explore mode, and a little bit in the dailies, like a tiny bump in study notes, but mostly here. And yet you spent the most time.
The music for the game is just a little too loud. I'm trying to mute it.
Just hit F4.
There we go.
F4. Okay.
There we go.
Yeah. So you spent a lot of times in the daily towards the end, but you got the most points to mastery, even though it's a little bit. Yeah.
Right at the end, I went back actually through each daily one by one. I think I actually went in order. I may have skipped between I may have gone 1, 3, 2, 4, 5, but I ended up going back and doing the ones that I actually had a higher score in.
Yeah, and I got a little bump.
To sort of build that practice, because I think you made these so that they're kind of building on each other in a way. Like one is just, you're just solving it straight up, and then 5 you have to do the whole conversion.
Yeah. So your scores, most people have a hard time with 2, so that was your red line here. It looks like 2, 5.
Which one was 2?
The red line on my screen. It's a.
Oh, I mean, what was the challenge?
It was lightly scrambled puzzles. You have to correct the.
Scramble. Yeah, like it was just you had to get it back in the proper shape.
Mm-hmm.
but it was always just a few steps removed of that shape. I think here, let me go to my notes, because when I went back through all the challenges one by one, I did start making hashtags. I don't know if I saved anything for daily 2, no. I did daily 1, so I started to add more shapes to the level select that weren't clean patterns. They were just messy patterns that that the challenge gave you that you had to solve as fast as you could. So I just threw those back in the puzzle select screen, and then did those again, because I figured for each challenge, at least the first few levels were all pretty simple. Challenge 5, I didn't quite grasp yet, so that I was still struggling on the first few levels for that one. But generally speaking, the first few levels I'd always be able to like speed through it, because it's only like 2 or 3 moves a lot of the time. You could just kind of, I could just visualize where to click exactly, because I was given, oh, you can do this in 2 or 3 clicks, so like it can't be that bad, right? Like,
yeah, you can only mess
like,
it up so much.
I don't have to think about exactly. Well, it's just a tip, right? I was able to use that info as a tip.
Interesting. So let's see. Your hashtags: rotational, stuck, impossible, happy, faces, easy, dots. You did a lot with dots. Diagonal symmetry solution.
Yeah, a couple of them were. I don't know if you could delete these in this current version, so I had a couple of repeats, but yeah, I was messing around with all the puzzles that involve single dots, and I figured, oh hey, if I could solve all of these puzzles that are single dots, and I think there are only 6 unique puzzles like that, and of course some of those could be rotated to fully fill the grid out. If I could solve all 6 of those puzzles, I could just shape the grid however I please. It might take like 20-30 steps, right? But hey, I could get there. Like, worst comes to worst.
Yeah, that was a really astute observation. So this is the way you use the filter on the level select to filter every puzzle you have the word dot associated in the notes. So you have this one, inner corner dot, center dot. Yeah. And that was a really interesting thing. So
yeah, I went back and I renamed some of the dots. At first, I just called the center dot. I just called it the dot, because that was one of the puzzles I was stuck on kind of early, because I branched like way out into the outer layers kind of early on, because I wanted to solve a couple puzzles like that one, because I kept running into that pattern while solving other puzzles. So if I could get it down to that and then just solve that based on memory, then I'd be able to knock out a bunch of other puzzles.
You really recognize the hey, you found some impossible puzzles. Exact. That was really good. Yeah.
I kind of had to mess around in explore mode.
And
I wasn't quite sure at first, but it seemed like the puzzle grid was kind of based on symmetry. Like, one of the puzzles was 2 corner dots. So in the 2 outer corners, there's 1 dot, and then another dot in the opposite corner. You solve that by sort of bringing those 2 lights together, and then let me see.
Easier way to solve. Boop. Boop.
Yeah, you end up bringing those together, so they only work
in pairs.
yeah, they only work by those lights coming together in the middle somewhere. And then I also noticed, like, there were several other puzzles, like the robot eyes and the regular eyes, I think. I didn't rename those, so. Or yeah, just called normal eyes. Yeah. Those were always in pairs, and they always like overlapped in the middle at some place to solve those. So
always in pairs.
at least for the robot eyes, those were on. I would have called those both outer offset dots.
So you were thinking about the puzzles in a way that's really mathematic, which I find interesting. I've talked to a lot of people who played this game, and a lot of were programmers and some were not. And it seems like the math-oriented people find these kind of relationships a lot better. Other people are more keen on using language or shapes or word pictures, but you are noticing this additive sort of commutative property of the board and thinking like, if I can make the smallest unit, that means I know that that dot can be removed without disturbing anything else, and therefore I can start process of elimination, understanding if one thing is solvable just by looking at it, right, and trying to analyze it on the smallest scale. Super cool. Crikey had discovered the identity matrices, which are like a way of clicking to where the board stays the same.
Oh yeah, I did find.
No matter, yeah.
I found at least one of those. I don't know if it was a universal nodes for net zero. While solving the dot, I noticed
if I did on both sides.
If I did a little bamboo,
Nice.
if I did a solution pattern of little bamboo, so like pairs of two, 3 pairs of 2 on each side of it, it would actually just turn out to be the same dot.
Do you know why that's good though? What that's used for?
I don't think I've made that that connection quite.
Yeah, it's interesting. If you use Crikey's friend codes, he was researching identity matrices or whatever, which is it has its own very particular interesting use. And you were studying like the elementary build up, and other people were doing other things. Like Tony, Tony's method for solving a lot of the build your own shape was to pretend like the very top edge of the cursor is a paintbrush, and you're applying paint only on the squares that you want, and then as you work your way down the page, you can keep manipulating it to what you want, at least until you get to the very bottom, right? And you can paint exactly what you want on the top screen, right? That was a very clever way of approaching making shapes when you don't know the steps, and then he would just deal with the shape that's left over and then try to solve that away, kind of a thing. But
I see.
And I was like, oh no,
that was for the challenge where you're creating the shape.
Yeah, and also for the daily challenge 2, where it's like if you know it needs to be this, you're like, well, I'm gonna paint one here because I know I need one there, and then the rest kind of solves itself. So you can use it in a lot of situations when you're unsure of the process or the clicks.
Yeah, so this like, I guess more mathematical approach, or the approach where if I could remove each place or remove each tile one by one, then I could make it however I want. That didn't occur to me until at least like maybe 70-75% of my time playing. So that was later down the road, once I realized, these other puzzles that just have one dot could become something more if I spend the time solving these particularly.
Yep.
And this was around the time where I was getting close to having all the lectures, like having gone through all the lectures, I'd already solved a bunch of layers in puzzle mode blindly, and I've done the daily challenges, but I had some low scores on some of them, so at that point I was trying to play around a little more to try to get some more insight. So what was funny about the finding the impossible puzzles, though, is I actually, at some point I found the shape, and you can search it. Can you go into the level select screen and see the shapes I added?
Yeah.
So if you search for not TIE Fighter, it'll be in layer 13. I thought I had the TIE Fighter shape, which was a pre-existing puzzle in layer 5.
Right here?
Thought I had that shape with one extra dot on the side of it. But it was actually not the correct TIE Fighter shape, because as you'd see, it's a little more stretched out.
Yeah.
So I saw that and I was like, oh wait, if I could just if I could solve this not TIE Fighter, then, and I know how to solve TIE Fighter, then I could solve just the outer side dot puzzle, just that single dot.
Yep.
But then I realized, oh, this is not the same puzzle. So
yeah, you're doing a really good job with the
that mistake, or not realizing that at first, threw me off for a bit, but I eventually caught it. Oh, the thing that Tony had, I did kind of start solving puzzles. Oh, I started looking a little more closely, generally speaking, at puzzles. So I wouldn't, whenever I'd make a move, I would try not to. I made a note of this. Oh yeah, the way I put it was, don't click in such a way that extra lights will spill out into areas that will require a lot more work to clean up. So I kind of want to go do like one sweep across the board, in a sense. Otherwise, there'll be one or two lights off in the corner, and then I'll have to like play around with those for 10 more moves to get it to work, and then I'll have a bunch of redundant clicks. I'll waste a lot more time if I'm being timed to do this, so
Yep.
Going a little more slowly in that regard was beneficial.
Are there any connections that Fate has that you don't have, or did you snag on?
So I, generally speaking, outside of the quizzes, I couldn't really view the friend data during my playtime.
This looks weird, because I think something should be happening, but it's not.
Maybe. Were lines supposed to show up as blue, maybe?
Yeah, if they're only
that how it was?
If he found a connection that you didn't have, they'd be blue.
Oh, okay. One thing I did do was, going back through some of those puzzles blindly, I did, like, all the layer 2 puzzles, I think I did
Find
as many times as I could to connect to as many of the lower puzzles. So, at least in the first few rings, I think I had, like, as many connections that are possible, given the initial, or with the puzzle shapes provided by by you.
Yeah, your friend data's not working. Maybe you put in the, let's see, friends and sharing.
Yeah, it was strange because the quizzes worked. Like, I saw all the quiz answers.
Yeah. So maybe, let me see.
So that was a little too bad, because that, like, even relevant notes during the puzzle, while solving the puzzles, I didn't see any of those ever.
Yeah. Let me see what giving you crikeys would look like. Okay, so that should work. Got it. What the? Couldn't find my one Methods Global Flies 3. What's wrong with your thingy? Huh. Yeah, something's weird. Okay, that's interesting. There's a lot I don't understand. But yeah, great job in getting this far. The lectures, were you... How would you describe how you went back and forth between the lectures?
So initially initially, and I think in general, I was only doing enough lectures to get enough other modes unlocked.
Mm-hmm.
So at the very start, I think I only did the first couple lectures to get puzzle mode, and then I did a whole bunch of the puzzle mode, and then
Yeah, we can go to your stats.
I eventually went back to the lectures every now and then, just to mix things up, and to break up my time in the other modes. So when to break up moments where I'd get stuck, not in the sense that I couldn't proceed, but I would sort of be dragging myself to do it.
Yeah.
A little bit, like
you flatline
like
for a few hours.
I'd just be getting tired of it in the mental sense, not necessarily the physical, or
yeah,
like my head's hurting, I can't do this, versus okay, I've just had enough of this. let's go do something else.
Yeah, between hours 2 and 5, you and like 6 through 8, it's these little flat lines where you would dip into the lecture content and then kind of do your own thing for a while. Especially if
is that in the stats too?
Yeah, it's mostly like completed conversations and questions answered. Questions answered are for like
so you base it off of that.
Quizzes, and then completed conversations are like how much you're engaging with the lectures.
Gotcha.
And then puzzles.
What are the little orange bits on the graphs?
Oh, I had a thing that was scanning all the data and finding sections that have like a sharp rise and slope, a flat line and slope, or a dip and slope, and I would have a way of switching between them because I was going to try to help the player find correlations. And that was just really complicated.
Okay, so that was kind of a beta feature.
Yeah, it's out.
I do see around a little before hour 3, okay, I start to really dip into explore mode.
Let's see.
So that must have been when I was trying to solve the dot puzzle and the full grid.
Yeah, you put in a lot of time. You're starting to catch up to your... Definitely exceeded your daily. Definitely far exceeded your notes.
Oh wait, how is this? So the x-axis is total hours played?
X-axis is your total game time hours. So like... Yeah.
Total game time hours, and then the y-axis is the amount spent.
Yeah, it's the y-axis was hard to calibrate for a bunch of different stats. In this case, I think it correlates to what is it? If daily puzzle mode is like 5 hours.
Yeah, because it goes up to 100, and I guess that's maybe a percentage.
I think I just based it all on like a flat value, like 5 hours in each mode. So your puzzle mode, you reached your 5 hours eventually at like hour 20, 5-6 hours, but everything else is kind of lagging.
I see. It's calibrated to that.
Yeah, 3 hours, half
or
of the
scaled
time.
to 5 hours.
Yeah,
okay.
6 hours, I think. Yeah. Just trying to give people a sense that if you fill the thing to the top, you've done a lot of time in that mode. So I just figured like 6 hours in any of the modes would probably be good, and then you compare it like that. A level. So it's interesting. The time you spend in level select, just staring at the levels, gets up into like.
Oh yeah,
2.5
like
hours.
2 hours. I wonder if I had the game idle during that time, or.
Yeah, I think I put in a thing where if you idle
it's still worth
it only counts up so much time.
Sorry.
I think I put in an idle prevention thing where if you're idle, it only credits you so much time sitting there on the menu until you move your mouse or click into another mode.
Okay.
Hopefully.
But still, it would be useful to just track. Okay, this is how much break time you spent, maybe. So that could go out of hand.
Yeah,
pretty
if you
just,
compare.
Oh, I just left the game up all night. there's 10 hours
you could
on
compare
this level select screen.
Game time hours with the rest, and the rest don't ever add up to game time hours. So that's your break time.
Oh, sorry. Say that again.
Your total game time hours is always bigger than the sum of all these other modes. So that would be your time taking a break.
Gotcha.
You spend a whole hour in review mode just looking at things after you had solved them. And considering that your compass was pointing at puzzle mode a lot, even though you weren't getting a lot of points in there, you can see like how you might adjust your approach in the future to really maximize your time.
Yeah, I think so if I was stuck, then I would have been doing more. I think I would have tried putting more messy shapes into the level select and then doing those. Messy shapes that required more clicks to clear. So that was only really for daily 1. I'm not sure. I guess even so, if I go into a daily challenge and then go back to explore mode, it would actually save at least the first puzzle. But that one only takes a couple of clicks, so that's not really helping me.
What was I gonna say? So around hour 5 to 7, you did something that catapulted your enlightenment time up a lot, your enlightenment factor. So I look at the other graphs at around 5 to 7. What blind mode shot up in hour 5 to 7. Okay. Nothing in dailies. Nothing here. Maybe the use of this tool, whatever it is.
Oh, 5 to 7. I think what shot it up was completing a bunch of puzzles blindly.
Yeah, and the click keeper. You use click keeper a lot during this time. Nothing else really shot up. Interesting.
I tried at least through, I think, like layers 8 and 9, and then maybe a couple layers before that as well. I tried to do a full loop around the orbit without exiting any of the puzzles, so I actually had to sit there for a couple of them and visualize the solution again, or at least get it to a point where it was a puzzle that I could solve.
Yeah, that's always. I want to, in the future, better stress that people don't have to perfect in blind mode, and also they should probably start.
Yeah.
They should probably not check every other puzzle and then go in and do it. So I got to figure out a way to make that a little smoother. And
like,
yeah.
Like don't stress that you have to memorize all of them and then go do all of them.
Or don't just check your answer for each individual one, pop into blind, solve it, and then check your answers for each individual one.
Oh yeah, with the click keeper, so you just like memorize it and then immediately enter it again in blind mode. Yeah, I think I did that maybe a little bit, but in the end, I did try to do a full loop for some of the layers with just blind mode. And having the title of the puzzle pattern that you can get to as an intermediate step, that was, I think that was a pretty big tip while doing some of those.
Yeah,
and you don't even if you're doing the daily challenges, how I would consider the proper way. You may not get that tip, so then eventually you might have to get to a point where you're not even thinking about the intermediate puzzle name.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting.
So I kind of, I guess I'll just point it out.
Mm-hmm.
I pointed out in the Discord already, but Daily Challenge 5 was definitely the one that I was struggling on the most for the longest time.
Mm-hmm.
And then after going through the other challenges one by one, it eventually occurred to me that, wait, I can just solve the first puzzle and then build up the second puzzle. But part of what was keeping me from recognizing that, I think, was as you try to solve the one that's on the board, this mode will just stop you and force you to rewind if you're a move or two away from solving it.
Yeah. So if you try to simplify it real quick, it's like
the ultimate best way I found to do this is to input blindly the solution for the one that you're transitioning to, and then just put in the solution, just memorize the pattern you were going to do for the first puzzle, or the from puzzle, and then put that in.
Yeah.
And then if you do it just like that, you might have a couple redundant clicks, but then you're just being tested on speed and kind of on speed and a little bit of memorization to not lose in your mind where the from puzzle was located.
Yeah.
Then you're solving. Yeah, sorry to interrupt, but yeah, then you're not just doing solving 10 puzzles. You're solving 20 puzzles. Kind of. You're doing double. But I think that was a better way of thinking about it than trying to lump it all as one challenge of like slowly melding this one puzzle into the other.
Yeah, I mean, that is a very key insight. All the stuff you were just saying there, it has to do with like chunking and memory and what's effective. A lot of people refuse to memorize stuff, and you can see how much of an advantage you have of being flexible and versatile in your solutions if you have some stuff memorized, not even all stuff. Some anchor points and making connections to those memories is really important. Being able to understand things as a series of conceptual methods that you can mix together instead of just steps, right? Holding two solutions in your head and merging them was the original idea of that mode. But if you don't, there are ways to do it, but you have to have a different set of heuristics. So like a lot of people really struggle with that. But if you just sit and think about it, like you said, I got to get to that puzzle. I already know how to do that one. And if you're used to punching shapes out of the puzzle just to remove them, it's like almost the same thing.
Yeah, I think I was originally trying to just think about it in some way that I was just transitioning it straight to the other puzzle. But too often, especially on the later levels, it would just require too many clicks, and I would just be wasting so much time trying to sort of intuitively finagle my way to the puzzle I was trying to transition to.
Yeah, there's so
a question that stood out to me is that, and you said the word anchor point. One of the little quiz questions, I think it showed up in a quiz, not a lecture, was like, are you developing an algorithm to solve this? And or like, how important is an algorithm to solve this?
Yeah.
And my favorite answer among those was like, I'll try to make one, but I'll use it as a backup.
Yeah.
So that's why a couple of the I didn't have many of the solutions that required I didn't have many of the solutions that required multiple steps memorized. Like solving the center dot perfectly was like the pattern for that's kind of strange, but what helps is that it takes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 steps to get it into a ladder, and then I can just solve the ladder. So that is a bit of chunking there, where it's 11 steps and breaking into 7 and 4.
Yeah.
And then that one was I just been using that so often it was worth memorizing. There are a bunch of other puzzles that required a lot of steps, but I wouldn't have those memorized because they only show up once in a blue moon, right?
Yep.
The other one was the inner I call it the inner corner dot.
Yeah, it just showed up on screen.
So the one, so that one, I don't know if that's the. Let me see if that's the best way to solve it, but it was the way I was solving it constantly.
Yeah, inner corner dot is just one step removed from small corner box. So small corner box is 12.
Oh, okay.
So yours is probably 11.
Yeah, this is 11. It's 11 steps. Yeah. Inner corner dot was one of the ones I found kind of early on too, and I wrote a note that kind of chunked the shapes, so it was like a little L and then 2 T's that were parallel to the L. So I was able to just visualize that every time I'd go to solve it.
Interesting. Yeah, the some people when they look at solution patterns, they just try to memorize it just by, I don't know, sight. But then, one thing the game tries to encourage people to do without telling them is you have a whole vocabulary for all these shapes, and you've been making word pictures out of naming them. Do the same thing for the solutions, right? You have one here that says give the sapling roots a low branch. So when you go to your puzzle mode, type in
that one was like I think that one showed up when I added it to the level select. I think that had more steps, and then that was one where it was like, oh, you solved it better than I coded it or something. Where is that one?
Low branch.
Sapling.
So this is for the sapling puzzle?
I think it was in layer like 13 initially.
Oh yeah.
And I didn't have that perfectly solved yet. I had added it, and just from doing and I had solved it just kind of finagling myself to the solution. And then eventually that kept showing up while doing the daily challenges. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna go back into puzzle mode and solve this one because it's showing up too many times. I'm getting stuck there. Even though when I would get to that point and get stuck there, it's probably because I'm going backwards in steps. I wouldn't have been doing the daily challenge puzzle perfectly. But regardless, if I would get to sapling so often, and if I knew how to solve sapling, then I could just finish off the puzzle there and then move on.
Yeah.
And not stay in my stuck state.
Yes, Crikey had a feel like that too.
Sapling. I tried to. The perfect solution was this weird asymmetrical pattern, solution pattern. So yeah, I my heuristic for that was
sapling.
The sapling gets roots, a low branch, and a high branch. So then you're kind of building the tree out.
Ah, sapling, as in a bamboo shoot or whatever. Yeah, and then your solution, I think if I learned it correctly, was a T over here, and then a T over here. Yeah. and then
Yeah, it was it was two T's as branches, and then a little
like worm.
just a couple in the corner.
So yeah, my solution would probably be a worm creeps up to the sapling, and then you can just trace the line there, and then finish it off. There's so many ways to get at the same thing. I wanted to try to help people realize.
You could write a little story for it.
A lot of people have weird ideas of what it means, what it requires to do well, and what it means to sort of have and derive the smart solutions. But oftentimes it's just the simplest stuff, and you do the process to make sure your brain uses it well instead of ignoring it. So back to the that was cool, by the way. I like your sapling.
Oh, the sapling. Yeah,
I like
thanks.
that. If I were playing my file, I would copy that over to my notes.
Nice.
My world.
Yeah, I think I only got to that solution though with the click keeper.
Mm-hmm.
So I did like my weird, just trying to solve it generally as best I could, sort of finagle it, and then eventually I probably got it down to like a center dot or something, and then put in my center dot solution.
Yep. You should. So it's interesting. You just like Crikey. Sometimes when you're backed into a corner and you get to something you just input the solution, even though it'll take redundant clicks. Did you ever?
Yeah.
At this point, do you ever stop and be like, wait, if I'm gonna put the solution over what I just did, why don't I just do what I do in Daily 5 and merge the two on top of each other, and then save myself all those redundant clicks in real time, right? Have you ever tried that? Yeah, it's like the same technique.
So that would be that's like another step of higher level thinking past the revelation I had with Daily Challenge 5.
Yep.
So
and it's
I wouldn't have gotten there before figuring out how to do Daily Challenge 5.
Yeah, most likely.
But that is a good point.
And it would be harder because you'll be using click patterns that are in between solves or click patterns for solutions you have yet to memorize. So that requires that extra bit of brain control that hopefully Daily 5 was training you well on. Not a lot of people use the flow history tool. It basically shows you that when you're solving this, and you're solving it efficiently, what's the next shape you are likely to hit, and you go into...
I was using it a little bit in Explore mode, and it did help a little bit because it contributed to my hunches of impossible puzzles existing.
Yeah, it's
I wasn't sure if there would be flow history for if there'd be flow history for puzzles that I hadn't solved but would be possible. But at the very least, it was giving me no indication of where the puzzle pattern was going as I was trying to solve it. So it was just, I was in the dark. I was in the dark, so to speak. And that sort of tipped me off a little bit that maybe you just can't solve this because it's not going to be reduced down to a simpler pattern.
Yeah. It's interesting too. So this dart, you just go to corner and cross 50% of the time, which means you would likely what is it?
Oh, what was it?
So I'm on the flow history tool and I put a dart on the screen. Dart's a 2-click puzzle.
Let me see what comes up. So you put a dart and then
flow history.
Oh yeah, it is 50% cross, 50% corner.
That's interesting. The fact that you do both of those like evenly, and it's kind of like it's saying that
is, like so perfectly 50-50.
Yeah. Some people
I think it was a little skewed. The first time I was working with the flow history tool.
The flow history tool, I think, is good when you are really comfortable playing the game. You see a look at all the stuff you tend to do rather than not tend to do, and if you just gently push yourself into doing the things you don't normally do, it's just like Kawashima said with prefrontal cortex brain training. It exercises your mind in a specific way that's probably pretty healthy. So that was kind of like the spirit of this tool, being a little bit more aware of yourself.
Yeah. If you put in the pattern worm hooks, I wanted to
Okay.
talk a little bit about that. Do you know what that pattern is?
Oh yeah.
Okay. Oh yeah.
There. Worm hooks.
There's one point where I was doing another puzzle blindly,
Mm-hmm.
but I keep reducing it to worm hooks. But then I was stuck because I couldn't remember the first way I did it. The first way I was solving worm hooks, which was I click near. No, what was it? I click kind of in the center ring, so then you create two worms.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the way I was doing it so often before then. But what was interesting was sitting in the blind mode and just staring at the blank grid, because it's in blind mode, but staring at this mental visualization of worm hooks, I realized, oh, you could also click on the sides and then becomes a pair of boots. And then you can solve a pair of boots. And then I think I made a note of that. Oh, the note I made was how to get to worms from here, because working on worm hooks in blind mode, I got stuck only ever going to pair of boots. So I completely lost the first way of doing it and picked up the second way of doing it. So I got into this I sort of lost the old habit and picked up the new habit. So I wanted to go back and realize what I was doing in the first place, and compare the two solutions.
That's super interesting.
It was actually the same number of clicks for either one, so they both work out to be they just both work as solutions because they're the same clicks.
So normalize, you just make the eyes cry by clicking underneath them, and it solves itself. But also robot eyes, you just make it cry underneath them, and it solves itself. But
normal eyes.
Normalize, and just underneath each dot, just click straight down.
Oh wow!
And then it's the same for robot eyes.
Are you using the flow history for that?
No, this is just what I've learned from this was crystals.
I kept converting normalized to robotic eyes.
Yeah.
So I kept going along the top, and then I go down from robot eyes to worm hooks.
It's Crystal recognized her mnemonic was just make him cry, and the tears always flow downward. Down
that's
the
a good
face.
mnemonic.
And then it's really interesting because both of these are labeled eyes, so anything else that flows downward, you might want to put an eye pun in there, and just to help you conceptualize. But when you do that,
so it doesn't completely solve it, but it gets it into a really easy state.
Defibrillator or side T's.
Let me try headlights.
Oh yeah, you have headlights. That's more complicated. You can
headlights goes down to vampire, but then you can bring that to center dot pretty easily. But still, that gets me to center dot. I know how to do that.
Yeah. So, part of what this journey is making the player, giving them some good feedback, and making them more aware of things like, why didn't I go back and think that? Why didn't I apply that? Or what have I been doing? Why did I lose this? And that's a big bulk of the experience. I'm not sure how much the lectures and the content in each help drive those points home, but certainly everyone realizes the tools are what help them really do well in the game, and the tools are all designed to kind of pair up with the concept from the lecture. So when they talk about limited memory, you're like, how about taking notes? It allows you to have infinite memory, and then people just go to town. They make notes of everything.
Yeah.
Why not?
Yeah. I do think a strong point of how the lectures were structured was that you'd always have the content leading up to unlocking a relevant mode.
Mm-hmm.
So, and you might have a question before that,
Mm-hmm.
or sort of ask the player, "Oh, wouldn't it be great if you could do this?"
Mm-hmm.
And then next slide, like, "Oh, that thing's unlocked now."
Yeah. Yeah. You read the Gritcher chats at the end of the most lectures?
Oh shoot, I just realized I had the game open 2 times.
Oh, that's now you're really enlightened. The Gritcher chats at the end of most of the lectures are supposed to be these real optional but relevant kind of thought.
Yeah, you had a bunch of anecdotes
Mm-hmm.
of personal experiences that tied in
Mm-hmm.
to the concepts. I think around the middle, I skipped some of the extra talks at the end, but I did try to do as many as I could
Mm-hmm.
of the extra.
Yeah, it's all good. Let me think. Yeah, in this learning model, uh, it explains how it works as thoroughly as I can make it, like step by step, and just kind of making people aware that of all the complexities. And there's one point where I say what you're really after when you're practicing or playing this mode is these heuristics and these little revelations, these little insights. And a lot of times grinding out the lower level stuff doesn't give you that. You have to sort of put it through the process of reflecting a little, being curious, playing a little, taking notes, processing your notes, or yeah, then processing your thoughts, and then right at the end you get these little insights. That's what I tried to make the defined groups and the Venn sorter about. If people were a little bit more comfortable, yeah, using.
I was on the level 6 select screen, but I was doing it in a group so we can talk about it.
Yeah, and I wanted people to use the hashtag system like they might in Twitter, which is just like funny groups. When you're mad, like hashtag burn this thing or whatever, like just really a way to express themselves. But then when they make it a hashtag, you treat it as a group. Like, are there any puzzles I want to burn? You're like, and then once you have the groups, you go to the Venn sorter. You're like, why are these puzzles do I want to burn and these puzzles I love? And then you can compare them, contrast them, really sort of get closer to finding out what it is about anything that makes everything specific. It's kind of hard to get people. It was really hard to get people to take notes at the beginning. Like, I'd be having the early betas, and I'd be like, take a note of it. And like, why? I don't know how to take a good note. Just write it down. You have infinite notes.
I'll admit there were times where, and especially in the daily challenges, like I'd get stuck on something, and I want to make a note right there. But I'm in a time challenge. I have to. I can't think about that right now. Or even just working in any other mode, I might get to a point and then be like, oh, this is like I'm kind of stuck here, but let's keep going. And then at the end,
it's hard
I might
to
think,
all
I don't really have anything to take a note of, and I may have just kept on going, but because you're forced a little bit to make a note before you're able to continue on past that puzzle. I would take a moment and then be like, oh yeah, there was this thing that was like a little bit harder or something, and then I might make a note on that.
Okay.
Yeah,
I didn't force.
Some of the time I did kind of cheat. I just put in like
whatever.
I just put in tip. I think I just selected tip or question and just put IDK. It's like, I don't know.
That's interesting.
But it did encourage me more to make notes, and I think I made like, even if it was just I'm scrolling through my notes at the moment to see if there are any other thoughts I had on those.
Let me see. I'm using the filter on the dot spread. It's a little tricky to use right now, but you get to see all the dots of a particular... Oh, you don't have that many solution nodes. Really? What happened? Or do I have the...
Huh.
There's a little bug where if you click the solution thing, you kind of untoggle it, and you kind of have to retoggle it. That's okay.
No, what happened was, I think a lot of the time I would finish the puzzle, I would go on the metal screen, and then I'd make a note there, and that solution button doesn't show up there. You have to press done, and then go to the...
Yeah, I took out that button on that screen. It was confusing people.
You have to go to the analysis first, and then it shows up. And I'm not sure if you also had to unlock that or not.
Interesting.
The solutions button to include in notes. But I did keep it for... Like, there were a lot of solutions that were just kind of... Like, they had rotational symmetry, or... They weren't as difficult to memorize or link it to another simpler puzzle. So may not have considered making a solution note for that at all.
Yeah. Cool.
I actually forgot I had a broken bridge solution because I was trying to solve that at some point. And it would have been after I had made that note.
Yeah, you get forced to take notes in daily if you don't get an 85 or above. So
I did notice that. Yeah.
It's basically saying, like, there's something you got to learn from this. So at least try to take a note of it. I could have done a thing where the lower your score, the more notes you have to take, but people would be angry. That would be a better learning pace, but people already feel bad or whatever.
Oh, if you search is it solution or
solution looks like a satellite.
So I did make some other notes that pertain to how to solve the puzzle. Like if you search full grid, I made a note. Remember, full grid clear clicks. It's a bird flying up and left, has a tiny tail too.
Yep, you saw the phoenix.
And then I made another note that just says, remember, a bird has a head, wings, and a tail.
Yeah, the full clear is I call it a phoenix because it's like
a
little head, and you have your little wings that come down, a tiny little tail, like you were saying.
Yeah, so that I still had a note of that, but it wasn't marked as a solution.
Yeah, okay, that's interesting.
I was trying to learn the UI, I got mixed up with the UI. Yeah. And there was another one that looked pretty cool. It was like a satellite.
Yeah, that one was cool. I saw your note for that. Yeah. So this is the full sort of range of learning. The game itself is super simple. You can imagine that if this were a normal game or a normal challenge in life, you might only get Explorer mode and dailies, right? Like a little scratch paper and then the final test. And you're responsible for doing all the other parts. But you can see how important having the right tools and the right encouragement is. As far as learning pace goes, you get to see like where you flatline and all your records are there, and it's just a way of convincing yourself of who you are. As far as the compass goes, it is possible to get this whole compass filled up with yellow and the whole compass filled up with red, right? That is what I would call the ideal learning pace, where you are spending just the right amount of time on everything to get the maximum amount of whatever you're going for.
Are you talking about the enlightenment compass?
Yeah, in the mastery compass. It's possible just to have it completely filled out with both the blue and the red, or blue and the yellow and the red and the yellow.
So the blue is pointing where you should invest more time?
It's pointing to the mode you have invested time in that actually yielded mastery points or enlightenment points. So in the last 5 sessions, 5 hours, like that mode was the one that actually did you some good. Everything else did not, basically. And that doesn't mean everything else was a waste of your time, but it's just saying, like, if you really, really want to focus in on mastery, keep this in mind and let it guide you. Some people were always spending time in puzzle no matter what. I'm like, you don't, look, you're getting 0 for puzzle. Like, it should tell you, maybe.
Yeah, it was only memorization.
Yeah, like, maybe the memorization can only go so far, and the reason that the dailies are hard is because you have to do more than just memorize. That kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but analyzing everyone's stats, talking to everyone afterwards, just listening to the different ways they came to it, and kind of mastering things in roughly 20 hours or so. That's a good chunk of time. Yeah.
It's like 20, 22 hours.
Mm-hmm.
So that's good for just like a video game in general.
Yeah.
That's plenty of time. It was does it show how much time it took to get enlightenment?
Yeah.
Because I would consider that like maybe beat the game.
10 hours.
And then mastery was 100%.
Yeah.
If you're talking about it in just
traditional game terms.
level completion terms, yeah. Or game completion terms.
Yep.
Enlightenment was
10 hours, like 10.3.
Yeah, like 10.5 10 and a half hours. Yeah.
I put that enlightenment goal in there just to encourage people to learn the method that I'm teaching about learning. And usually when they complete that, they get super encouraged and they can see themselves learning and they try to go for mastery, which is pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
If there was only one goal, it'd be mastery. But, you got to help people. You got to give them steps instead of just a canyon. But yeah.
Yeah, taking the small steps is pretty key.
Yeah.
And this is or going back to talking about notes, and I guess this is a little related, but I remember one of the lectures was like, yeah, you're gonna feel dumb about pointing out some of the obvious stuff, obvious things, or just smaller
insights and
talking points.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how the note-taking process is. Like, it's like, what is this one little note going to do?
Yeah. Or who needs this? Or I already know this. Why would I take it down? You're like, that's because that's how it works.
or like, am I gonna get much out of this?
Yeah.
What does help? I think it is important to be able to explain in words whatever method you're using or algorithm or heuristic, so you aren't just kind of using this nebulous mental map to solve things.
Agreed.
So in the end, I had the revelation about daily 5, and then I wrote my note on daily 5. Visualize combination of both puzzles' solution patterns. If clicks overlap, they cancel out. Enter the clicks to create that solution click pattern, but in a way that doesn't get too close clearing the board. And I would have added another method. It just says input the second puzzle first.
Yeah.
So you never get to that solve state, and then have it trip you up. Oh, was the rocket puzzle bugged in daily 5?
Yeah, it's bugged in general. It depends on what random rotation it picks that it doesn't recognize. But if it just happens to be straight up, you're lucky.
Because I got
yeah.
It was sideways a few times, and I was like, this is. It's like, what's wrong on here? Like, what one tile is not lit up?
Yeah.
Whatever. It's like, oh, I have to. If you skip it, but it actually looks right, does it count against you or?
No, it counts against you. Yeah, it's just a bug.
Okay.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Well, that's rough because that was on the mode that I was struggling the most with.
Yeah.
And I encountered that a couple times, so.
Yeah.
That stunk. So you were talking about Method Maker. Like you were just gonna remove it?
Yeah. Do you see my screen at all?
Oh, I actually don't.
I can. Yeah, it's on Twitch under Design Oriented.
Oh, you are on Twitch. Okay.
It might be a little buggy. It might crash, but I can explain it pretty easily.
Yeah, I noticed it would crash if you held too long on any of the nodes.
Yeah, I think it was rapidly trying to do something. I got scrapped that entire system. The system got scrapped because the UI was very difficult and trying to convince people, trying to get them to express so much more in words when they had a hard enough time doing just notes was too much to ask. Um,
Yeah, it's kind of like the next step.
mhm.
Or you might organize notes. You might distill those notes down into the methods, just like that is the part of the CPTM model, right?
Mm-hmm. So on the screen, I've been testing out this thing in Explore mode, and you can randomize. What you have is the method shaker. Oh, wrong save file. Well, I can show you anyway. You can make a new method.
Ooh, method shaker.
And you can be like, shake it up. And the description is tasty. And you save it. You add a node. Your first node is trying to figure out what the goal is. So you have about 52 different nodes here for like a visual scripting program. So let's say you want to.
Oh, jeez.
Let's say you want to solve his puzzle solved. A goal function that can be made out of the count the lights, but here for convenience. So I want to know is solved. Save it again.
Are those all preset steps?
Yeah.
They can kind of piece together.
Yeah. So let's say with this puzzle, all we want to do is.
This is a lot more like explicit tips too.
Yeah, so like in this way, I can create these scripts and say this is my method, and you can click on it, see it happen, and go, wow, how does that work? And if you open it up, it's just real in plain English, like find the densest area, right? So let's say we'll add that in.
Okay.
And we'll say rows, columns, quadrants. We're just gonna do rows and lights per row minimum. You can set a minimum, but we don't need to do that. So like, boom, find the densest area. The next thing is target cell. Let's type in target and hit enter. Target cell random. No, we need to. Oh, well, there's a bug or there's a crash. That was the last thing I was working on. But essentially, you can script it all out, make parentheses basically for indented groups. You can make if conditions. You can make one method switch from an entire method to a whole other entire method given a certain condition. The sky's the limit in terms of what those nodes can do.
Oh wow! So you could actually sort of program a little bit with that.
Oh yeah, definitely. Let me pull up
those presets.
Let me pull up my file and see if it crashes, because it should be a little more stable.
Yeah, for the method maker, I thought it would. I didn't have too much to explicitly write out for each group.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me. But for those that I did, I do think it was a little bit useful. I know you said you were gonna scrap it, but I think I made it so steps were overlapping or something in the UI. So
yeah, I saw you using
confusing.
it, and I was like, hey, you did a pretty good job considering how confusing it is.
Yeah.
But it's essentially you can go to any of your hashtags, and if it's a method, you can start putting steps to define how to do it. And then I was like, well, what if they want to update their thing over time? Well, I let you go to each step and like put another step on top. So it's kind of like stacking coins, where if you keep adjusting your last step in the process, you would see the first step's like a coin, the second step's a coin, but the last step would be like a stack of coins with the most recent one on top. And then you could even scroll wheel down through the coin stack to see like how it changed over time.
Oh, use scroll wheel. Oh my
God. There was absolutely no UI help for that, so don't worry.
I just didn't know to use the scroll wheel. even for the rewind feature, like for the long times, I would not realize that you can just scroll through it.
Oh yeah.
Scroll steps at a time backwards.
Mm-hmm. So let's see.
Okay, because I was actually, I wasn't updating a method, but I put in additional steps, but I didn't update the step number.
Okay.
So I was.
That's gonna break.
So I was stuck trying to navigate back to the other steps I had overwritten. But anyways, yeah. I think it was useful to be able to put in words.
Yeah.
Or start putting in the words how to solve certain kinds of puzzles, like the ones that have complete rotational symmetry.
Mm-hmm.
My method was click the corners if it helps, and then. Oh no, the first step was. Click the corners if it helps. Figure out the right combination of clicks along the outer ring, and then the inner ring, and you need to click the center. So that was all stuff I was doing, but it just helped break down into words step by step. So
yeah,
anyone else might be able to pick it up as
definitely. To make that, so I wanted people to be able to express themselves, take each other's notes, take each other's hashtags, build on them, add their own puzzles, share puzzles, like all of that high level stuff. But for the method maker in particular, I felt like that was too much of a language barrier. So I was like, if I make them encode it all in these nodes, you don't have to do much explaining. It either works or it doesn't, and you can modify it just by modifying this. So you can make your own script, and here's an example. Hopefully it'll work. I allow people to make their own Overwatch. This is the new Overwatch system.
Oh, okay.
And you make scripts, but in this case, instead of it solving it for you, or manipulating the grid, Overwatch is basically says you can make scripts that look at the grid and give you specific feedback given the conditions. So this one I have it count the lights. If it's a little bit of lights, you get this sound effect. If it's medium lights, you get this one. If it's a ton of lights, you get this one. And all it does is you click. Let's see. Oh, hold on. Overwatch.
Does it give you different sound feedback too?
Yeah. I'm gonna run it. Test Overwatch. Okay, so it just sits there in the background, kind of like Richard used to. You click it, and you can see it crashed. But it runs through the logic, and then it just plays sound effects. And you can have it trigger things like Richard to talk, sound effects, the screen to flash, like all these things to try to help you make ways to get yourself to pay attention to things, right? You like, for example, you can make it to where if your flow history tool, you pick the obvious option, it could be like, wah, wah. You're like, I probably should have picked a different option. But it allows you to customize who looks over your shoulder and what they look at by making the scripting system. It's crashing.
Yeah, I think it does help to keep it more in terms of the game system.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so people aren't working from nothing when making the methods.
Yep. And then the final thing you can do when you make your methods is apply the method to every single puzzle in level select, and it gives you like a little stat and a readout on how successful it was. So you can be like, you can be like, this is really good for beginning puzzles. This is really bad for beginning puzzles.
The level filter, I wanted to go through
how it works.
I was kind of interested to go through all the ones I had marked as rotational and see how they did with the little method I made.
Yeah.
But there didn't seem to be a very good way to do that in this current version.
Yeah, so I'll have to make it to where you hit the button, it scans all your notes and pulls those up, and then it scans and if it scans a note that has like all the little puzzles you clicked on in the define it section, then it would highlight those as well. It's not hard. It's just one more step I had to rope into the search. But yeah,
Right.
that's definitely what I want
What
people to
about
do.
making like a, so if you group puzzles together, could you just do like, could you consider that a playlist and then just say, have somewhere where you could just play that group of puzzles all at once?
Let me think.
So you would solve a puzzle and then you'd say next level and it just puts you right into the next
Yeah, I think
level in that group.
I'd have to preserve what the filter search is, and then just give a button that just says play a random puzzle from the victory screen. And if it keeps the search filter the same, it'll just pick another one. That'd be good.
And it doesn't even have to be from the puzzle mode too. It could be from the groups
Hmm.
page.
Yeah.
Like when you're defining the group and what levels are selected, you could just maybe have a button there that says
Hmm.
play this group or something,
Hmm.
or solve this group.
That's interesting.
Oh, Richard was kind of blocking some of those too, but that's just like a UI thing.
Yeah, a lot has to change. Gritcher used to ask you questions, and you could click on him and make notes by talking to him to try to get people to talk more. Lots of things I tried. But yeah, thanks for explaining your experience. This has been a lot of fun. I'm glad you played it. I think for our purposes, it's really going to help us get a better, more concrete understanding of communication and the importance of these little things that are hard to get people to do otherwise. That's why I'm hoping and kind of forcing everyone to play enLIGHTen to work on some of our other projects. It just seems so essential not to have a vague notion of what it is to learn, but to be like, we need more. We need more of this. We need more notes. We need to take time to reflect, and everyone expects those things to happen now.
Mm-hmm.
Should be fun. All right.
Let me see.
Any final
I was
words?
seeing what other notes they had. Did
Ah,
we talk about the hidden shapes tool?
I can. I'm running out of space again. But yeah, the hidden shapes tool in the newest version is really cool. It lets you it highlights the shapes in the grid, so that instead of just looking at a list and wondering, you just click it and it just highlights it for you.
Gotcha.
The
So
hidden, yeah.
I think the hidden shapes tool, it wasn't too useful to me in the moment, like the moment to moment puzzle solving, but it got me thinking more about identifying smaller shapes as I went along. Like, I definitely remember using the hidden shapes tool, and Dart was showing up in the list a few times, and I was like, oh yeah, I could alter my clicks so that I'm actually solving the Dart first, and then go from there.
Nice.
And I think that helped me be able to solve stuff more flexibly and on the fly in the challenge modes.
That's interesting. If you would imagine that the Rubik's Cube is about as similar complexity to solve as like enLIGHTen for really hard puzzles or for the dailies or something, you can imagine how much easier it would be to solve a Rubik's Cube if you had tools to help you.
Yeah, besides just here's the algorithm, here's how it works.
Yeah. If you try to...
Well, actually, not even how it works, but just here's
steps.
How to do it. Or not why it works.
When I solved it on my own, I remember in my head having so many just like fuzzy heuristics and steps, and I'm like, if I lose these, I lose all the months of work or whatever. And one time at work, I went to go eat lunch outside, and I had a smoothie, so I could just drink it. I just sat outside and stared at the Rubik's Cube, and I didn't even twist it for 30 minutes or whatever, just like recapping on all my notes and thoughts just so I wouldn't lose them, basically. And if I didn't do that, I wouldn't have been able to solve it. Things like that.
Yeah, so with no references, I've only been able to do like the first two layers of it, and then I'd have to resort to like whatever different algorithms there are to use based on where the remaining colors are in the top layer. That's where it gets really tricky.
Yep. Man. And the other cool things that I want to experiment on in the future is now that you have enLIGHTen, you have your save file. It has all these sort of abstracty shapes memorized and connections between them. The game knows how much you've played every shape and how often you see them when you're connecting one thing to the other. It could that your save file can be used to build like abstract memorization structures that can be mapped onto other things entirely. Like, imagine if you were solving a Rubik's Cube, and instead of thinking, left, right, up, turn, clockwise, you just think, I'm looking at the bottom layer. It's all white. Now I need to make a dart in the corner. So you start flipping it around till you see a dart. You're like, I need to make this and this. And you're just completely doing a different approach to getting the same turns to happen. But you're like way more comfortable with enLIGHTen terminology. That could be a thing.
Yeah, somehow mapping the terms would be pretty cool. I'm not sure if the systems would be quite one-to-one.
Yeah, it would be just using the conceptual flow rather than the procedural flow. Trying to find as many analogs.
The dart might mean something different. It would have its own set of inputs for Rubik's Cube.
Yeah, but then you're still trying to get that shape to happen or something, right? It would need a little working, but I think it's possible because a lot of other memory.
Maybe not even using those terms exactly, but you could create terms for different sets of inputs for the cube.
Yeah.
And kind of go along those lines.
Yep. Like if it's like right turn clockwise, top turn clockwise, right turn counterclockwise, that's basically opening a drawer, popping something in, and closing it, right? And that'd be a lot easier to remember for me than RL, TL, R.
Yeah, it's like you're chunking the notation.
Like open the drawer, put the thing in, grab a piece of candy, flip the dart, and solve. You're like, that's essentially what the Rubik's Cubers do. They just found that, however, terminology they use more useful for them, but everyone can have a different set of heuristics. That's the fun part. But all the methods and the insights are more common than they are not common.
Do cubers usually use, what terms do they usually use? The regular notation?
Yeah, I think they all know the regular notation, but then they don't say it out loud because they can just be get to the result, and everyone's like, yeah, obviously get to this result, and they just do it.
Yeah, or even if you're doing, like, if you have to say the notation out loud, it would take a long time too.
Yeah.
Though, I think for like if someone's solving a cube for a time contest or whatever, they always have only so many twists to mix it up. So it's like 12 random moves or something. Or however many.
The solution, I think, is never more than 14 twists away. But
if they can identify those exact moves, then that wouldn't be that much to say out loud as they do it.
Yeah. No one can do that, though.
Nope. Oh, to do it perfect?
To know, no matter what the scramble is, what the 14 moves are to get it to the solution. Computers can do that. Humans cannot. Quintillion combinations and stuff?
I just don't know. I don't know, you get so good at it, I don't know. Maybe you can just look at it and be like, okay, maybe like at least these 7 steps are correct, and then I'll get... It's like enLIGHTen, maybe. You can see, okay, this... Like, we've got to do at least these few moves, otherwise lights will spill out, and then I can just work out the rest of it.
Yeah, if you want a good comparative experience with enLIGHTen, go and do daily 1 and click the blind button first, and you'll have to try to solve all the daily 1s blind, and that's incredibly difficult, right? Because there are no touchstones or patterns that you can reach on your way to solving it, and they're random.
Oh, yeah.
So then that's what solving the 14 perfect turns for the Rubik's Cube would be you'd be so out of sorts. You'd be so in the dark all the time until finally click, oh, it's solved. At least that's how I understand it.
Yeah, I'm doing it right now blind. So, oh shoot. Oh, 4 clicks. Okay, so yeah, it's a little hard to talk and do it at the same time.
Yeah,
but
take your time. It's fun.
But it's like 4. Okay, I got that one. Level 4. Level 4. Yeah. Oh, okay. So once I get it to a recognizable pattern and I do get that header tip, then it's not too bad. Wait. Yes, I just did, it was 5 clicks minimum, but I'm going to spend like 20 clicks because I'm doing my inner corner dot solution. Level 6. Yeah, okay, so I'm just gonna give up here because it's a little much, but level 6, I have to think about it more.
Yeah, it gets quite intense.
Yeah, you get to up to 6 moves or more, and you really start to struggle with, like, even as you're solving it, you may not get it into a previously recognized pattern, so you may not even get that header, the puzzle name tip as you go along. I never use the use added shapes.
Oh, that should only be available once you reach mastery, but I think it was still up there anyway.
Okay.
That's a very.
I never used that because, especially after I added some messy puzzles, I wouldn't want those in the mix.
Yeah, it's supposed to be for people who really just want a crazy challenge. You can just add some crazy puzzles and then have that start populating.
Or several of the puzzles I added, they were like
random.
13. They're just harder puzzles. I wouldn't want those in there to make it harder on myself.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I mentioned already. There were times I didn't know exactly what to make notes on.
It's so hard. That's as much of a personal thing as it is a technical thing. And a lot of people wanted help making notes, but I'm like, it's supposed to stem from your curiosity. So I kind of want people to go back to the lectures. The quizzes, you really hit home on that, where they slowly and slightly introduce concepts for you to mull over. And that's supposed to make you curious. When you're curious, you're supposed to just like, okay, and it gives you a question button. So if you have a question, that's perfect for a note. And yeah, I didn't want to push too hard on that.
Yeah, even I think questions as notes are underrated. Because just a thought can be a note. It doesn't have to be a fact about the system or how, like, it doesn't have to be an answer, right?
I like going into other people's files and click the question mark to see what they have questions on and just think, like, do I have the answer? What kind of headspace are they in? That's fun.
Oh, like I started making how to solve this one, #stuck. I made a note to solve the sapling in explore mode. Some of them don't make sense because of the pattern that got saved with the question. But
yeah,
either way, I started. I think it's easier to write a question note versus a tip note, because if you're writing a tip to yourself, you kind of feel like, oh, it has to be correct. Otherwise, you might be going down the wrong road.
Cool.
Some of my notes are just like, don't forget to use the hidden shapes tool, or Don't skip puzzles too quickly. You have plenty of time.
Mm-hmm.
Just like not necessarily a puzzle solution, but just a way to work better.
Mm-hmm.
Work on finding the orientation faster was one of my notes. So that was just reinforcing to myself, focus on how we're going to, like, which direction this is going to be before we start clicking tiles.
Mm-hmm.
That was for the daily challenge.
Yep. Did you ever click on the thingy to rotate the target?
Oh, for the challenges, yeah.
Okay.
Including the including when I did the rocket. And I was like, wait, this is right. This has to be correct.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
Doing a lot of diagonals helps, but not efficient was another note I had on the thing. So, yeah, like you can not, I think, not worrying about whether something is right when you're making a note is a roadblock for a lot of people, myself included. So like maybe include with the note, yeah, this may not be right. Like I remember in school I'd write like little tiny notes on the margins for something like that would be a note, but I wasn't entirely like it would be a factual note, but I wasn't entirely sure, so I just put a question mark at the end, just so later when I see that, I would recognize that I had uncertainty at the time, so I wouldn't just read it later and be like, oh yeah, that's like forget my uncertainty and then consider it as 100% fact, and then maybe go off in the wrong direction of thinking.
Yep.
Shapes thing. Made some smiley faces. I had a note. So chess and checkers was interesting because those were two different puzzles where all the lights were alternating. It was alternating along the whole grid. However, both games in real life, they have the white square in the bottom right as you're setting it up. But chess had black squares in the corners. So I made the mnemonic to myself. Chess is shorter than checkers and has less lights because of that.
I was trying to make the harder one to solve, chess, and I think I got them mixed up.
Okay. Yeah, some other faces, strange, like even like this would be a case of where I just didn't know what note to make, so I just found some mess, saved it as a shape, and called it strange pattern. Yeah, some other notes were solutions, but just tips on solving it, not necessarily I didn't include the solution clicks because I didn't know about how to include that. However, the advantage of doing the shapes, having as a shape note, and then writing a mnemonic for it, or just the algorithm, is in the note itself, you can see the shape. If you go to the solution tab, you only see the solution clicks.
A lot of people want the also to show the puzzle it goes with.
Yeah.
And that's not hard. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say, so that just relies on the note taker to make the note include the puzzle name, and then that would be good enough, I think. And then the note is tied. If you're making that note inside the puzzle, it is tied to that puzzle. So if you pull up the relevant notes tool, it'll show up there when you're doing it.
Correct. Yeah. Well, thanks for playing. We hope to
Yeah, it was
expand.
a very, very interesting time. I had a very interesting, I would say, fun time playing it
Mm-hmm.
because
Cool.
it's fun to learn and it's fun to get good at stuff. And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
finally getting all the revelations needed
Mm-hmm.
to reach the mastery benchmark was rewarding in the end.
Good to hear.